Most of the time, history is made up of stuff that sucks. It's not made up of wonderful, happy memories. Wars, earthquakes, floods, famines, diseases, disasters, that's what makes up history. And most of the history, by the way, of what I know, I learned in songs.
Take a trip with me in 1913 to Calumet, Michigan in the copper country. I'll take you to a place called Italian Hall, and the miners are having their big Christmas ball.
This was a great town. I tell people all the time, when you look back at Calumet, you're looking at Silicon Valley 1900.
I wish they had left that building there. There was no sense in taking it down. There was one crack on one side, and they tore that thing down. They should never have done it.
Actually, when you come right down to it, it was a crime that was never solved.
There was a lot of people that lost their lives that night.
After that day, God, just think how many people left here.
The piano played a slow funeral tune, and the town was lit up by a cold Christmas moon. The parents, they cried, and the miners, they moaned. See what your greed for money has done.
That's nice, right? Did the song come first? How'd this movie begin? Here,
let's see, did mine work? No, mine doesn't work. Okay. Well, we have sort of a standard answer to this, which is...
Don't give us that one.
Well, no, the truth is that, yes, the song came... We heard the song. I heard the song. And I heard the song a long time ago. And this song bounced around in my head. And sometimes I think the right word is for Woody Guthrie's music is it abided in me. It stayed in me. And actually, the way it stayed in me, though, was in one of these sort of obsessive patterns of the first verse, basically, which has the line in it, "I'll take you to a place called Italian Hall." And I couldn't understand what Italians were doing in Michigan. And I wanted to find out. And it made me crazy enough that I went out there with a camera and I started shooting. And I shot some footage and I brought it back and I showed Ken. And Ken, you can talk about what you thought from there. I mean,
so Louis showed me this footage in my living room, and we looked at it. And there was a woman against a brick wall, I remember, and she was. Louis asked her, "What can you tell me about Italian Hall?" And the woman didn't say anything. She looked right in the lens and she started crying. And I knew at that moment that there was something happening up there. And I said, "Sure, let's go." And I think we probably made about 7 or 8 trips up there over, I guess, from 2000 to 2006, and shot 300 hours of footage up there, and also following another strand, which was the Woody strand. People who knew Woody, people who had things to say about Woody, from Studs Terkel to Odetta to Dan Zanes, and a whole lot of people that you didn't see in the film. Just Pete and Nora and Arlo remained.
Dan, try your microphone. It might work.
Is this one working now? No.
Not working.
And was Arlo brought up there by you guys, or was he going anywhere?
Arlo, we didn't bring Arlo there. Arlo brought us there, I guess. We found out Arlo kind of works in his own ways, and we sort of just kept up with him. We found out that he was giving a concert at the Calumet Theater in like early September we found out he was giving a concert in the beginning of October, I think it was. And we booked flights and went up there, and he was happy to see us again. And it's like, hey, how you guys doing? Oh, you're here. So it was this kind of nice coincidence, and I mean, we got very lucky in a way, but there was something throughout the project where we sort of felt like Arlo was guiding the project in his own way, and we sort of let him take us where he wanted to take us. And he really, I think, ends up being kind of the storyteller of the, as Nora once said to us, Arlo's a great closer, and I think he is. He kind of knows how to wrap stuff up and draw points from things.
So I want to go to the song some more with you, Nora, only because one of the cool things I think about this movie is the uses of history and whether this town's going to remember this incident and how they're going to remember it and how they're going to forget it. And it strikes me about the song that here's Woody writing a song, and you talk about it a little in the film, where he was 1 or 2 years old when this happened. This is ancient history for him. He's writing it in the 1940s, which you allude to as being a tough time. And it strikes me as for a Woody Guthrie song, and they're all over the map, but it's a unique one in a way, in that it doesn't end by going, and we're all going to fight for the Union, this land is your land, you know, I'll work in these fields and fight till we win. It isn't that song. It ends, look what your greed for money has done. What's your thinking about how this song got written and why it's lasted and what you feel about the song?
Well, I'm not a scholar on Woody Guthrie's songs, but I can tell you that he wrote it in Coney Island, actually. Pete's wrong in the movie. He wrote it on Mermaid Avenue in Coney Island in the late 40s. And he was home most of the time taking care of us kids, actually, when he wrote it. At that point in his life, since he was kind of housebound a lot, it was kind of right during and after the war years, he was getting a lot of inspiration from newspaper articles, actually. He would read 5 or 6 newspapers a day, and books, 5 or 6 books around the house, all opened at a different chapter. And this particular song came out of Mother Bloor's book, I think it was. So he had a knack for writing like almost screenplays. A lot of his ballads are almost like screenplays. He started out actually in life as a visual artist, and I've made the case on a number of occasions that that's where he learned how to tell stories, by learning how to look as a painter. When you really look at details, the color of the brick, the temperature of the snow, little details like that that really make these. In other words, it was so easy for them to make this film. But Woody had already kind of laid out the screenplay. All they had to do is fly up there for 7 years and film it and pay for it. But that's the story behind this particular song. It's really one of a cycle of songs that he did, were kind of like journalistic ballads, using a painter's eye.
And the sadness in it, what do you make of that? I mean, the fact that we don't have a cheer at the end?
I don't know, is there a therapist in the house? I don't know. Well, I think at that point, I'm just hypothesizing. Again, I wasn't there, but I think that the union movement hadn't gone so well. The Communist Party hadn't done so well. A lot of things that he had a lot of high hopes in, which didn't make the fact that greed was still wrong. And I think there was this kind of despair and a warning to future generations that there's only one thing, like even if we haven't found the answer yet, we do know what the problem is, and the problem is greed. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm sitting here, Mitt Romney is talking right now. Isn't that wild? What in the world could he be saying? Look what your greed for money has done, I would say to him. So I think it's kind of a different song, even in the Woody Guthrie canon, That's a word, isn't it? It's a big, big word. It's a school word. Even in the canon of Woody Guthrie's songs, that one is really piercing, that last line, because as much as it's a little bit despairing, the Union, in this case, didn't win. A lot of people died. A lot of people got hurt. A whole town emptied out, as you saw in the film. They didn't win this case. The problem still goes on, and Woody is still there. He's still hanging in there. He's still saying the problem with greed is going to still lead us to more and more and more situations like this if we don't do something about it, and the warning still stands true today.
Great. Thank you. One more question, and then you guys should ask some, although we can't see you anymore with this light on, but we'll figure it out. So Woody writes this song that is about history. I'm interested in the structure of your film. He writes this song about history that goes back there, and you guys go up there, as Nora says, with no money and 7 years ahead of you, and cover this song. The movie's set up so that, you know, I always think 15 minutes into it, when all the dead bodies of the kids are laid out, that there's nowhere for this movie to go. It's so moving and brutal by then. But the movie turns into a investigation of how we remember history or don't remember history. Tell me if you guys knew that going in, that that's what it would be about, and your thoughts about how you ended up structuring it, how you put it together.
Can do it, both do it. There are a couple of things. We didn't really know a lot going into it. What we did know is that we were following Woody's lead. I mean, there's something about the song and this place, so the song took us to the place. What we discovered, and I'm probably not answering your question, I'm just saying what I want to say, if that's okay. Sure. I'm quoting him. The line, I'll let you shake hands with the people you see, was haunting us in the background. But right now, I would say that that's what we ended up discovering. Like, it wasn't about the literal thing, who yelled fire, because there's no way we're going to ever find that out. But what Woody's song invited us to do was to get to know these people and to hear these people's stories and to hear what they remembered and to hear what they suffered and to hear what they longed for and to hear what they didn't long for and to hear what they didn't like. So it really became about the people and their memories, and it's right. I mean, it was haunting us, and then we realized it recently. It's right there in the song. That was the invitation, and that's also why, and I mentioned it offhandedly, that a whole lot of people that we interviewed are not in the film, including historical experts, people who've written books about Italian Hall, people who've written books about the copper mines and the strike, and again, people like Odetta and other people who knew Woody and were from his time, because it was really about the people of Calumet.
I guess I would just add to that in a way, sometimes I think of Calumet as it's a documentarian's dream, because everybody in town knows one story, right? What happened at Italian Hall. Everybody can tell you that. Of course, they won't tell you a lot of things about what happened at Italian Hall. So in a way, it's a documentarian's dream, and it's a documentarian's worst nightmare, because it's a town where nobody wants to reveal anything. So the whole tease of making the film was, there were points at which we thought we were going to find out who yelled fire in Italian Hall, and then the tease was it didn't matter. Right. It just didn't matter, because we weren't making a film about the event, we were making a film about the memory of the event. And so that, I think, ended up informing the editing as well, where there was a kind of fracturing of the story. We just let the story sort of fracture into a lot of pieces, because that's what the story is. It's fragments of memory. It's not, and in a way, I don't want to get all abstract and everything, but in a way, that's sort of what history is, right? It's fragments of memory, and then we assume that it's this coherent story that we can all learn and tell. So, You know, I mean, I kind of think like that woman telling the story of the funeral march, to me, that interview left me, you know, trembling. She was 3 years old peeking out a window, and she saw this thing go by, and she made sense of it later in her life. That's
90 years later.
90 years later, yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Oh, well, let me say one thing about you asked about the structure.
Yeah.
The structure, well, Louis used the word fracture. I think that's a really good word. And I think that what happens is we envisioned a film that was like a series of great little scenes, like a kind of string of pearls, that because we knew right away with the layers of, is it about the song, is it about the town? You know, there's so many layers, and you have to know certain things to move forward. Otherwise, you don't have any grounding. So we envisioned this string of pearls, and that wasn't working for a long time. And then in the end, it seems like that's kind of what we have. Like it's more impressionistic than literal plotting, you know, going from point A to point B.
I have a million more questions, which I won't ask, but if you guys have some, this is the moment. Is there still a mic to hand around? You've got it, Matthew? You guys want to ask any of these three people something? Don't be shy, your chance will disappear. Right there, ma'am.
From the shot that I saw from inside the hall, there was a stairway going down and doors right there. There was no space for a door to open in from what I saw. So if that's true, then all these people that said the doors opened in, they were all somehow fed a line and were holding to it to cover up what maybe some of them knew about the goons.
Well, go ahead.
It's a small town. It was ripped apart 100 years ago. Guess what? It's still ripped apart. But because it's a small town, people have to figure out ways to live with each other. So they swallow a lot of stuff, and they're really nice to each other. And otherwise, they would be at each other, and they couldn't live because they need each other in the town. You know, somebody needs the butcher, and somebody needs the doctor and all that stuff. So they learned how to cooperate. So it's one of the myths also when something really tragic happens and there's no one person to say, like this is before video camera was there to show who was the guy, he was the guy. It's all a myth. It's a myth that's created for safety, for protection, so we can understand this horrible thing that happened. It's not a human being that did it, it's the doors. The doors were opened the wrong way, so it takes off all human responsibility is, absolved.
Right, this is obvious, but I guess the power of Woody Guthrie's song, obviously, and what everybody up there finds so, what is the word she used? Despicable in some aspects, is that Woody assigns responsibility, and he basically accuses the mining company of murder without saying the mining company murdered these people. But he does a good enough job so that you can conclude that this was an act of murder. This was a crime, as the woman in the cigarette shop says. And crimes don't happen because of mechanical malfunctions, right? Crimes happen because somebody does something. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just Calumet. Do you want to say something to that, Nora? I mean, ask Sam Wyman someday about, when he comes here, about the integrating of the Nyack schools in the 60s. And our town says everything was fine. We didn't have any problem with it. And there are different stories about that, depending upon who you talk to. I don't think it's just Calumet or just Nyack.
Yeah.
Yes?
Thank you. First off, thank you very much for your film. And, it may not matter in the end, but my morbid curiosity, I grew up with this story. My family were copper miners in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I grew up hearing this story. So I guess my question becomes, after your almost very thorough official investigation, what do you guys think happened that day? I mean, it's an awful question to ask, but morbid curiosity is going to get the best of me for years.
Here's my quick answer, okay? My shorthand answer is, what happened that day is what had been happening for 6 months. There was a strike. That's what happened that day. There was a violent strike. The place was a tinderbox. So somebody yelled fire. And whether there was somebody holding the doors or the doors got stuck or people got piled up, there was a strike. And in a way, to me, that becomes the central event to focus on. You know, when we first heard Tony Sayadovich say, my sister saw a guy, saw a cop close the door, I thought, eureka, right? We've done it. We found the guy, right? And there's this photograph that we played with for a long time. We couldn't make sense out of it. But it's a photograph taken in 1913 of a big crowd, and somebody circled somebody and wrote, Chief of Police. And so we thought, oh, this must be the photograph showing the guy. Of course it's not. It's somebody wrote Chief of Police on a photograph. Doesn't mean the Chief of Police held the doors of the Italian Hall shut. But so finally, I think we sort of feel like we can't put the pieces together, but what we can say is that there was a strike and this town was torn apart. And so when that happens, and this isn't the Chicago teacher strike that gets resolved, as serious as that was, that gets resolved in a few days. This is 6 months, right? And when that happens, events like this can take place. And when the bosses won't budge, the head of the mining company, Jim McNaughton, was asked, why don't you just negotiate with these people? And he pulled out his wallet and he slammed it on the desk and he said, I don't negotiate over my wallet. So when you got that on the other side, stuff happens. Are you finished?
Yes, I am. Both of yours.
Oh, all right.
It's so great that you came, and you're welcome. We're heading for Calumet tomorrow morning, so we're going to show it up there for the first time. Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's great. I'm going to answer just in my way, just for a second, to say that it's a one-word answer. It's the strike, but also holding the door shut also can be a metaphor, because during that 6-month period, there are so many stories that probably could be told, and every single day that there were no negotiations, that the town was ripped apart, that was also part of the 1913 massacre. It wasn't just that night, it was the entire period.
Well, and it seems to me Woody's answer was greed, right? Yeah. We got one more question or two? Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. Given the violent, the history of violence in strike situations, and oftentimes I'm sure there was violence on both sides, but even Ford admits to its own violence in what was it, the River Rouge plant, the strike there in Michigan. I think that the idea of the concept of somebody, thug, whether it's official or not, on the company side yelling fire and possibly holding the door, certainly consistent with, it's not inconsistent with the history of violence and labor. I first heard this song sung by Jack Elliott, an album I had back. I started playing guitar in around the mid-'60s, and I heard it from back then. I always loved that. That was the first version I heard, and the only one I heard for decades. And I believe it. That's all I have to say. I believe it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, all I was going to say in response to that is, there were Pinkertons there. There were Waddell guys there. These were detectives that these companies would bring in to break strikes, right? And they would break strikes by breaking people. And I think what Nora was saying earlier, I think there's, even if it's not literally true, Woody kind of keys into what is true, which is that there's this, at the center, there's this refusal to negotiate with people and refusal to recognize people because they happen to be working for you. And that greed, the way that operates is that to me is the truth of the song. If that doesn't sound too highfalutin or corny or something, but that to me is, so Yeah, I mean, I sort of believe it too, but can't say for sure.
Got one more?
Not working for me. Oh, there we go. Since she's here and she's the director of the Woody Guthrie Foundation and the Woody Guthrie Archive, I wonder if Nora could tell us a little bit about how the legacy continues.
Look at this guy.
You don't want to get sunburned.
It's like, that's so cute. What was the question?
If you could tell us a little bit about your work with your father's legacy and the foundation and the archive, and how his music is passed along.
I'll talk about that, but could I ask the people that had a question about the film first, and then maybe I can kind of sum it up? I do agree that Jack Elliott does the best version of 1913 Massacre. I want to get that on the record. And we've been doing, throughout the year, concerts from California to the New York Island celebrating Woody's centennial. And every single concert that I grabbed Jack Elliott to be part of, he goes, "So what do you want me to sing?" I was like, 1913 Massacre. That's all? Yep, that's all. Yeah. So we're actually doing a show at the Kennedy Center in 2 weeks. And Jack's going to be singing 1913 Massacre in Washington. Love it. So I just thought maybe if there's any film questions, they're kind of on a roll here. You can just Google me and find out what the foundation does.
Thank you again for such a great film. I just had a comment. It reminded me with all those myths, and different things that the people were talking about, like the doors opening in and things like that. It just reminded me of the saying that history is written by the victors. And it was the owners that, wound up being the victors, and they, the strike was ended and they all went back to work and with the same conditions and everything. And it just made me think of that those myths, besides the fact that it was a small town, that it just made me think of that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Got one here.
Great job, Ken. I just wanted to know stylistically, the photographs had this kind of blurry quality to them. Was that on purpose? Is that because of a situation you had with the photographs? And then also just getting Bruce Springsteen's version, how?
Okay, so 2 parts. So the first part about the photographs, we had we were a little wary going in because we didn't want to make a boring historical film with all these Ken Burns moves and all that stuff. So a lot of things.
Is he here?
Sorry, Ken, but there were a lot of moments in the film that where things came together, a lot in the process of making the film. And one of them was that I had this little camera that I really loved. It's the camera that I took to Turkey, the little video camera. And that camera is amazing because I could take a picture take some video of part of my thumbnail and it'll be in focus. And a lot of the photographs were these massive tableaus, especially the ones of little children, and they were half the size of my thumbnail. So that's what those were, completely blown up to full screen. So it was there was no tripod involved. It was just hand holding, and the plane of focus was the depth of field was so narrow that sometimes it would go soft. And I was also trembling as I was shooting them because they were I was discovering as I was shooting because I couldn't see. There are things that you see here that you can't see with the naked eye, that only by blowing it up in that lens that were visible. So discovering the expressions on these little children's faces, who we projected, we use as the children who were at Italian Hall. And a lot of the photographs we shot, that way, and then some we shot with also a tripod, and then we did moves after. But the ones that are blurry, those are all handheld with a 1-chip. Thanks.
I can do that.
You want to do Springsteen?
I mean, you're asking. I mean, there's the sort of music rights stuff, which is not really interesting. Oh, well, there's lawyers, and you talk to lawyers, and then they. Did they what? Oh. Well. Well, I mean, you get festival rights, at first for the songs. but and then there's prices negotiated out from there. But but we're always pleading poverty because it's true. And on top of that, there was the interesting layer to the Springsteen thing was it had to go through a conceptual approval first. So they had to see the clip where his song, of course, right? I mean, imagine the sort of uses that could be put to. And This Land Is Your Land, imagine the uses that is put to, right, all the time.
As we sit here, it's somebody else's.
Yeah, somebody's doing a Romney commercial with a big SUV going, I guess we got an okay from somebody, but then their music rights are expensive and.
Yeah, but one thing we have going for us, and I'll be really revealing to just say that the budget for the film, which is over a 10-year period, was $85,000, which is about as low as you can possibly get. And most of our costs were getting to and from Calumet and finding a place to stay there. And we did try the $32 a night hotels, and they were all, we got gangrene. What was the thing? Like mold and stuff like that. So we had a bump up to the Best Western, which was about I think $72 a night in season. So it's not much money to make a film.
We got a couple more still. Matthew, cut us off if you need to.
It's up to you guys, really.
Well, we're good. We're getting a good tan up here. Do you want to say something?
No. I think also to what her question was Bruce Springsteen's recording original for the film, or was it a recording from an album that you requested permissions for?
The album live, it's a live album. He did live, I forget the title, live something.
Okay. And my other question is, so you're going to Calumet tomorrow. What do you think the response will be? Based on the interviews that you had with all those people, do you think that they'll be, I don't know.
Oh yeah. Okay, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., Louis and I will be at LaGuardia getting ready to go to Calumet, where the film will be shown Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday night. And well, everything's a premiere, So they're calling it a premiere up there, but it's
never been shown there.
Never been shown there before, and it's free admission, and people hopefully will come. And nobody's seen the film, and we're very excited about it. And we're excited because for us, as the poetry of returning to where we shot the film, it feels really amazing. Just to complete the circle. And we also have some fantasies or hopes that the film will actually create some healing up there, that people may finally want to make peace with their past instead of hiding it. And we're excited about certain people seeing the film who we care for very much, like Joe Kranitz, who is one of our favorite people in the film, who tells the story of Italian Holy. He's the guy also at the cemetery. So in terms of people, we're bringing somebody with us to videotape. So in case they're throwing eggs, it'll be.
In case you don't survive, we'll have some.
We'll have the evidence, yeah. And somebody else will make a film about our demise in Calumet. But
The doors went in.
Right. Yeah, we just found them there.
Yeah. Anna, we don't know. We really don't know, but we're excited. I mean, that's the best answer I have, and we'd love to tell you all about it after.
It occurred. Watching it occurred to me there's these layers of history and history and history. You guys were saying that a bunch of the people you interview have passed on since the interview. So it seems to me one of the audience's reaction is, look, there's my mother, who's gone now, on top of the kids who are gone now, on top of Woody, who's, yikes.
Yeah, it's also, when you see a film, if you live in Nyack and you see a film that's shot in Nyack, it's a little hard to watch the film because you're saying, oh, that's that store and that's this and this and this. So there may be part of that too.
Right. There's one more right there.
Thank you all. And as the lady said there, it's the victors who write the history books, but it is the artists who will bring out the truth. Because Woody Guthrie wasn't just writing about Calumet. Less than an hour from here, the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire happened. And I happen to know a man who, he was not yet born. His mother and father brought their 14-year-old cousin to work there, and she died in that there. Less than 3.5 hours away from here is Pennsylvania, and they have never healed from the Molly Maguire situation there. Every June they have this occasion, and the relatives get together, but there is no healing still there of that tragedy. And it takes artists, like I said, Woody Guthrie wasn't just writing about Calumet. He was writing about all of this. And as just one more thing, I do tutoring, and I do tutor history, and still today, the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire is a paragraph in the history book on the 100th anniversary. And thank you all. And again, Nora, I said to you, keeper of the flame, absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.